Okay, let's talk about oppositional defiant disorder. Now, oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder are two conditions that can be progressive. And what I mean by that is kids can start with oppositional defiant disorder and progress into conduct disorder. Now, just because a child is ADHD does not mean that they're automatically going to be oppositional defiant or they're automatically going to be conduct disorder. There is not that connection. Sometimes people put that connection together. And sometimes you will see kids with multiple diagnoses like ADHD, conduct disorder. And so sometimes people think they always go together, but they don't. ADHD has a physiological component to it, meaning that medication can be required and in most cases is required for the management of it. Oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder, there is no medication that can change an attitude or change the kind of behavior that happens with conduct disorder.
You sure that's just not a teenager?
And so that's that normal thing. Because there's a range of normal that I remember when my daughter was 13 and all my great training and all my great skills went out the window and and I was ready to clobber that child. But there is a certain amount of this that is normal teen behavior. But with oppositional defiant, it is more excessive. It is more excessive. And so if you look on the description, I bolded it for you. There is an ongoing pattern of uncooperative, defiant, and hostile behavior toward authority figures that seriously interferes with the youngster's day-to-day functioning. Now, the part that you want to underline as far as oppositional defiant disorder is the part that says toward authority figures. And that definition up there, the section that says towards authority figure, because that is one of the distinguishing issues with kids with oppositional defiant. And so you can send kids that are oppositional defiant someplace else, and the parent will say, oh, they are just so sweet, they are just so nice, oh, they're so helpful. I don't know what you're talking about that you're having problems like this. You know, and in the class that you guys were in before, I had this one child, the one child that is doing so well now. No, this was a different kid. He was in one foster home driving this foster mom crazy. She says the sky is blue, he says it's green. And he is maintaining his position regardless. And so they were just going round and round and round. And so he would go to Respite at this other foster home. And this foster dad said, oh, no, I think I can give him what he needs. We get along great with each other. We have such a good time when he comes over. And so this kid just says, oh, yeah, he understands me. We're really good. And so it was just escalating in this other foster home. And so finally, he blew out of that home. The foster parent said, I just can't take this anymore. So he went to this foster home where he used to go to Respite. I think if they lasted 4 months. If they lasted 4 months. Because what happened is, when he was doing Respite with the foster parent, he was not his primary authority figure. Mm-hmm. He was, we can go have fun, we can talk, we can do this. Once he became that primary authority figure, then that's when the oppositional behavior started and the conflict started. And so that whole response to the authority figure is one real key element in distinguishing with oppositional defiant behavior. Now, what is oppositional defiant behavior? Look down under behavioral features. Frequent temper tantrums, excessive arguing with adults, active defiance and refusal to comply with adult requests and rules, deliberate attempts to annoy or upset people. Are we all on the same page? Okay.
Is that the one you're talking about? It is.
You too far up, girl. You're getting ahead of me.
I get way up there.
I don't know. Here we are right there. Okay. Blaming others for his or her mistakes or behaviors, often being touchy or easily annoyed by others, frequent anger and resentment, mean and hateful talking when upset, seeking revenge.
Are you sure this is a 3 and 4-year-old?
Well, see, now understand, and up in that top paragraph, in the top square, it talks about how some of this behavior is typical of adolescents, especially early adolescents. Because what adolescents, their job is to separate from their parents and define themselves as different. That's their job. And so sometimes the way that they go about doing that is to say, I'm different than you. So you like a yellow shirt. I don't wear yellow shirts. I only wear red shirts. And so, but that's what they do. And because of hormonally the changes that they're going through, they become very touchy. It's just like 1 minute, everything is great, life is good. The next minute, life is awful. You're the worst parent in the whole wide world. 1 minute, you really understand them. The next minute, nobody understands them. They just, life is just so bad. They just don't want to live. But then the phone rings and they're talking to Susie, and so life is good, And so, but I'm telling you, 3-year-olds are like miniature adolescents. They truly are. And so you'll see a lot of that similar kind of behavior. So a lot of this is normal adolescent behavior. But with the kid who's truly oppositional, defiant, it exceeds that range of normal. It truly does exceed that range of normal. Have you had a kid in your home that was oppositional, that had an ODD diagnosis?
Oh, yes.
Can you give them a sample of what they were like when they were with you?
Temper tantrums, overreaction to arguments, likes to create conflicts within the realm. A lot of control issues.
Very much so.
Defiant towards a teacher. I think the one you said the best is when I say it's blue, it's green. And it doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
You can talk, and you can have, we caught this kid on camera at school. No matter what you say, they're going to defend whatever they think is right.
And they can be dead wrong. They can be dead wrong. Like this one kid that went to the other foster home and then blew out of that foster home. He used to take in, the dad got married, and so the new wife came into the home. And he would intentionally, she would say, come on, it's time to eat dinner. We never ate dinner at this time before. You just come in and you're just making all these new rules. And then she would get up. Well, you don't talk to me that way. What do you mean I don't talk to you that way? I can't talk to you that way. You're not my mother. Who do you think you are? And so then when the foster dad comes home, he would go to the foster dad and say, she was yelling at me at dinner, or she wouldn't let me have dinner. And so they will intentionally create conflict in an environment and then step out of it. I didn't do anything. It wasn't me.
I work in, my children that I work with are all ODD, or contact disorder, where kids in transition, they've all blown out of regular classrooms, and so they're in our class. And they'll do that even for there's 4 teachers in there, and they'll turn us against each other. Yeah, try to.
And if you are a foster parent and you are a couple or married, or there's multiple caregivers, their greatest skill is to split you and turn you against each other. That is their greatest skill. They are excellent manipulators. They are great at creating conflict in an environment that you think that is not possible to create conflict. They can create conflict, and then they step out of it. Now, kids that are ODD, I call them kids with attitudes. I mean, it is just, they just have such an awful attitude, and they will talk smack, and they will confront you. They will get in your face. They will say words and say things that will push your buttons. And before you know it, you are just so hot and you're just so mad. And then they just, I didn't say that. I didn't do that. I mean, that's what they do. And so you end up feeling like the fool. You end up jumping all around, getting all mad. And then when you calm down, you go, oh, God, I can't believe they did it again. But they are very skilled at that.
And then you end up trying to prove to yourself why you got so upset, because they're like, I didn't do anything. And then you're like, well, maybe you didn't do anything. And, they'll just keep at it.
And one of the things I always find is that they always try to, no matter what the situation is, they have a way of turning it around and putting it back on you.
Yeah,
it's never their fault.
It's like, well, maybe it was me. And then we have to have a team meeting. 4 of us are like, well, did you say that? Or, or
right.
It's like, wait a minute. it. They're doing it again. Yeah.
See, this is a great one. I have this one kid that I'm working with, and he's a foster child, and he plays people really well. He is just so good at it. And so I told him one day, I said, well, you know, that's what foster kids do. You know, you play people. You play everybody. And so he goes, well, no, I don't. I say, yeah, you do. I say, you play people all the time. That's what you do. And you do it real good. You know, and kids who have been abused, that's what happens to them. And so it's like creating a paradox for them. So it's like, okay, well, no, I haven't been abused. Well, then why do you play people so well? It's what comes, you know, that's what happens. So you have to make a choice. Either you were abused or you don't play people. He goes, you're just confusing me. And so then he says, well, no, I don't. Tell me how. I says, well, you play your mom. No, I don't. Well, yes, you do. I said, when you go over to your mom, when you went over to your mom's house the other day and you knew you weren't supposed to be there and you were supposed to be at the foster home, did you tell your mom that you have permission to be there? This is his game. Well, she didn't ask. I said, oh, so this is the other part to kids that are ODD. And I said, so did she say anything? Well, yeah, she said she was going to check with them and see, but she didn't ask me specifically.
Yeah, specifically.
Specifically. So I could say,
that comes up every day.
are you supposed to be sitting in that seat? But if it's not a specific question that says exactly what it is that I want to know about that situation, they're not going to answer. They're not. And they'll split hairs and they'll say, well, that's not exactly what you said. You said. And so then you come back, well, you know what I meant. Well, no, I didn't. You didn't say that. And so, what?
No, I have a 20-year-old daughter, and I'm thinking back to when she was 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and it's just like, you're just mimicking everything. I'm like, why did I have such a hard time with her?
One of the hard things I find about ODD kids is that when they go to their therapists, they present very well.
Oh, yeah.
They do.
Oh, and you know what? This kid had me going. He was really good, you know, and so that's why I decided I'm going to take a tact with him, that I'm just going to just be confrontational and just matter of fact, and just kind of engage with him in a way to say, hey, whatever you're doing, I'm just not interested today. And so I call him, because they're also drama queens and kings, and so I call him Drama King. And so sometimes when I go get him or I'm working with him, he'll come in and he's just very demonstrative and everybody's doing this to him and that, and I'll say, you know what, I don't feel like the drama today, so let's just cut the session short. And so then we'll stop. And he's like, oh, because you disengage from whatever it is that they're throwing at you. And that truly is the key for dealing with kids with ODD. You gotta disengage, whether it's a dramatic thing that they're showing you, whether it's a power struggle that you're engaged in with them, whether they're making you question your sanity or whether you're right or wrong. The key to dealing with kids with oppositional defiant is to just disengage from whatever it is that they're throwing at you. And so you set up the rules, and whether they split hairs with, well, you didn't exactly say, because you'll say no snacks before dinner. Well, I had an orange. That's not a snack, that's a fruit. And that's exactly what they will do. Okay? And so, okay, well, now you know it's a snack. And so it's part of the rules. And so you still enforce whatever the consequence is, because if you get into a discussion about what they're splitting hairs about, you've lost. You have lost.
We have lots of posted rules, and of course our rules by the beginning of the year, they're small,
right? And then they expand,
because you have to cover every possible way that they could look at it, you know. So even the rules to look at your token, we have token economy, to look at the book is like this long now, you know, because if you don't turn it to this page, well, but you didn't say that we had to turn 3 pages. You just said to turn the page, and
But you're right. The best way is disengage and be very specific.
And be very specific.
And that's with the posted rules and stuff. It's the rules. They're there. We don't have to talk about it. It's right there.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to minimize your discussion because you will lose. They are really good. They are really good, and you'll walk away all frustrated.
Would that fall under survival skills? Because they've learned over a period of time what they can get away with, how far they can push it, and at the same time they know that if they go beyond that boundary, that there's repercussions behind them.
And you know, up until that last statement, I was with you, because they find that there is an environmental component to what causes ODD, and it's that chaotic family environment and that inconsistency and what they can get away with. And so what happens is that they, a lot of these kids have not had consequences for their behavior, so they just keep going and going and going. For some of them, that is the factors. Not for all, but for some, that is one of the factors.
One of the things I noticed that in our daughter, her mother has emotional and mental deficiencies and unable to take care of her daughter when she was young, and the fact that she had other children. And it seems that she would play both ends against the middle.
Right.
And if I use tone elevation like early in the morning, and you know, if she's not doing things she's supposed to be doing and getting her ready for school, I found that if I bring my tone down, bring it way down and keep her calm and peaceful, that I can redirect her to what she's supposed to do. And once she gets into the stage where I don't have to do it, my mom says I don't have to mind you, you know, you're not my dad. But in the next moment she'll say, Daddy, I love you.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say, that as parents, our job, or caregivers, or whatever role you're in, is to set limits. That's what we do. We set structure, we set limits. And a child's job is to test those limits. So they're going to test you. Now, the important part is maintaining whatever you said was going to be. So your yes needs to be yes, and your no needs to be no. So for these kids that are ODD, they have gotten good at causing this limit to change for whatever reason, whether it's on the part of the parent or whether it's on the part of the child. And so that's one of the common features of adolescence and what happens in adolescence. And so when they get to adolescence, they challenge our authority in a different way. And so then we begin to question our authority, and they can use reason, and sometimes they can get very good at using reason. And so that's why early in adolescence, as they're testing a lot more, the firmer you can set your boundaries, firmer in the sense of consistency and follow through, that later in adolescence, they don't test them as much because they know how far they can go. And so parents that I work with that have been very lenient or very compliant, overly compliant with children, meaning that they gave into kids a lot and let them get away with a lot, or gave them a lot of toys or a lot of privileges because they were cute or they were kids or they wanted to just give to their children. Then they hit adolescence and they want the kids to kind of rein in a bit, and the kids just kind of go off the wall and they just want more and more and more and more. And so what parents have to do is reestablish themselves as the position of authority in the family and have the children come against them, which they will, and then just maintain that position. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry. How do you handle an opposition defiant disorder with a neighborhood child that has a tendency to try and restructure your child? In other words, the neighbor child, the girl, is 11. She's had problems as AD.
And your child is 5?
Our child is 5, yes.
They don't play together. They don't play together.
Well, that's what I've been trying to discourage.
No. You don't discourage. You set it as a rule. You cannot play with her. Yeah, it's not a discouragement. It's a rule. You can't play with her. She's 5. She's 11. She's too old. She's going to influence your 5-year-old in a way that you don't want her influenced, so she can't play with her.
We've noticed a little change.
Yeah, so that's an easy one. She can't play with her. Now, if they're 12 and 14, that becomes a different issue. But even with that, you want to set some limits and you want to set some rules about what is who's acceptable for them to interact with and who's not, and then follow through if they break that.
The hardest part is she's being neighbors. She sees her every day because she gets home from school early. She can't wait till she gets home. She wants to play with her outside, and I've had to set it so that, no, you can only play with her a couple days a week. I'm present at all times when they're playing, and I conduct I run a tight ship, actually. You know?
Yeah, and so
You have to.
that's another
Yeah.
way to do it. The other way is if you're going to limit her playing with her, get her involved in something else.
Right.
Give her something else instead to do that is equally as fun for her, so that decreases the importance. Because whatever you take away from kids, you want to give them something to replace
Right.
it with.
Well, I've been trying to do that by taking her to the park
Yeah, there
after
you go.
school so she can play with some of the kids from her own class
Exactly.
rather than to be around her.
Right. Okay. The determination of ADHD is more than just someone walking in and saying a child is ADHD. There's generally a child interview and a checklist or some paperwork completed by the caregiver, by the teacher, by other adults engaging with that child, so that there's some kind of profile of that child's behavior.
A history.
Yes, exactly. Well, the same thing happens with ODD when a child is diagnosed, because you see the behavior across environments with people who are in positions of authority. So you may not see it you'll see it with the teacher, you'll see it with the parents, you won't see it with the therapist, because we're generally not telling kids what to do. And so you'll see it in different environments. And so that's where the interviews become real important. And so as you look at the treatment for kids with ODD, there's a child interview, a parent interview, a teacher interview, and then observation and interaction. And children with ODD may be diagnosed with ADHD. Treatment of ODD generally include parent training, individual psychotherapy to develop more effective anger management, family therapy. If I'm working with families, I love working with families with kids with ODD, because I tell the kids when they first come in, I say, if I'm doing my job right, in the course of this process, you're not going to like me. Because you have too much power and you have too much influence, and you're telling your parents what to do instead of your parents telling you what to do. So then they get mad at me, and I think, oh good, I'm on the right track. Oh, cognitive.
I was just saying, Marie hates her therapist.
Yeah.
Because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when I work with parents, and parents start telling me, or I hear kids when they're coming to my office, or if I'm doing in-home services and I'm driving up, and the kids go, "It's that Sharon," and I know you're only doing that because Sharon said so. Yes, I'm on the right track. You know.
Do you find a lot of parents of ODD kids tend to be more like their peer?
Yes, exactly.
Than parents?
Exactly. More like their peer. And so when it's time for them, and kids resent that. Kids resent that, because what kids need is, all children need to know that there is some adult in my life that can manage my behavior, that is going to be able to tell me how far to go. And so if as a parent they're their peers, then who's there overseeing and managing their behavior? And so when kids clearly see that my parent is in charge, that gives them a level of security, a level of comfort, decreases tension, because they know that I got somebody there that's going to help me and not let me go so far. Now, they're probably not going to come tell you that. Oh, thank you, Mom, for not letting me go hang out with my friends tonight. It may be, you're just the worst mother in the world. But as long as they go to their room and they don't sneak out the window and go do what it is that you told them not to do. And if they did sneak out the room, you're on them. And then there's a consequence for that. And so, yeah, it truly is that.
So it's probably pretty difficult to help the parent. Was probably easy to teach a parent how to be a parent, but for the child, they see the parent as a peer. So to change that thought process, that's the difficult part, because they're not going to allow that to happen.
And that's where it's more work with the parents. See, because when this is the way that I envision it. We're taking a little detour. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. All right. So this is the way that I envision it. And this is what I tell parents, is that this is a family. This is separating a family boundary. And so that family boundary separates what happens inside of this family from what happens in the outside world. Within this family, there's something that's called a generational boundary. Now, what that generational boundary does is it separates adults from children. Now, in kids who have been abused, this generational boundary doesn't exist. Okay, and that's part of the reason that kids are coming in to you. Okay, there is no adult in their environment that is able to be an adult to help manage and structure and control the environment in which the child lives. So now in kids with ODD, when parents allow children up here in this adult domain, which is exactly what happens, kids have too much power and they're up here, is that I don't worry about what the kids, how they perceive it, because if I can get the adults to be adults, it's going to construct another boundary right there. Okay, so whether kids get it or not, I'm not particularly concerned about that. But what I am concerned about is the change in their behavior. And the way that I go about monitoring the change in their behavior is what the parents do. And so if the parents say, this one girl decided she wasn't coming to therapy, she is just so mad. So they said, you are coming. I don't care, and you are staying. And so they brought her in. You sit down, Dad sat by the door, and Mom sat on the other side of the room. You're staying. You're not going anywhere. I don't care what that child thinks, but the parents are clearly exercising their authority as parents and reestablishing this boundary. And so over time, if they can continue to do that, that child is automatically going to go down here.
But for single parents, it's more difficult. Like you said, there are two
Right.
parents in that scenario. But with single parents, I find that the children tend to up the ante.
Exactly, they do.
And so it's going to be it's going to have to be a strong, healthy adult.
Exactly.
That's what you have to create.
And the other thing, and we're going to talk about this afternoon. Hold on just a moment. And we're going to talk about this afternoon, because to make this work successfully with a lot of these kids, you got to have a team of people. You cannot do it by yourself. And so who are those other adults that you're working with this particular child? Because you're right, they wear them down. They get tired. And so one of the things, if you look on this, I'll get to you just 1 minute. If you look back here under environmental management, go down to the bottom of environmental management. Number 2, take a timeout break if you're about to make the conflict with your child worse, not better. Do not engage with them when you're upset. You will lose. Okay? You may lose that battle, but you can still win the war. So just disengage for that moment, and then you can go back later. But pick your battles, because everything will be a battle. So choose which one you're going to battle and which one you're going to let go.
I kind of, at some points, when you disengage, you take a break, you kind of did win.
Because you maintain control.
Right, and the child now has nobody to argue with.
Right, because you've taken yourself out of that equation.
Right, and then what I often find is later on, the child actually initiate it back again in a more civil way.
Right.
So you do win.
And that's
a different strategy.
Right, and that's what I tell parents. Instead of parents running after kids, I want to see kids running after parents. Mom, what time are you coming home? Instead of this, Mom, where are you? You need to get home. I want the child calling the parent, Mom, I'm home. What time are you coming home? I want to switch that around. But you want to, number 6, manage your own stress with exercise and relaxation. Use respite. I should even cross out as needed. Cross out the as needed and put use respite.
I like that.
Because you need to use it. Because what's going to enable you to manage a child with this kind of behavior is taking care of yourself. Because they are not going to stop, probably not in your lifetime or while they're with you. But what it becomes is a matter of how you can maintain the environment so that you don't lose it and the child grows to 18 and leaves home. How's your daughter now?
She is living in another state, so our relationship is not real.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And so you won't necessarily see it with the kids while they're with you. Okay. For you, it really is an issue of just managing and surviving with this child with this kind of behavior. Because it is very demanding. And so take your respite, set up a team of people, and we'll talk about that this afternoon, so that you have some support behind you. And when you need a break, you can take a break. You know, and foster parents come to me, well, we want him to feel a part of the family, and sending them off to respite is just not going to be good for him. If you don't send him off to respite, he's not going to stay in your house because you're going to get burnt out, and then he's going to leave. And if this was your own biological child, I would be telling you, let him go stay with his aunt, let him go stay with his grandparents, go take a break. Doesn't matter whether it's a foster child or your own biological child. Parents, you need a break when dealing with these kids.
With the budget cuts, has that taken an effect on that?
And I've heard that before. Now, foster parents' ability to receive respite is an entitlement, and it should not be subjected to that, because you are entitled as foster parents to 2 days of respite per month for each child that you have in your home.
And we've never run into not being able to get a respite. So when I hear other stories and we've done it for 7 years, and we've taken weeks at a time, we've taken and always gotten our respite. So
yeah, now with a private agency, we arrange respite for our foster parents with us.
yeah, I guess I've always been in a private agency. So,
Okay. Yeah. And so we've not had a problem with that, but I have heard that that some foster parents have been told that they can no longer get respite for their kids, but that is entitlement to which you are entitled as a foster parent.
So it doesn't count. Generally, I was getting respite so when I have to come to class, but that don't give me respite because I'm in class on Saturday, and so I still have, I don't have that time to myself.
Yeah.
I like to have a weekend.
Yeah, you're
to
entitled.
myself.
You are entitled to a weekend to yourself.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to.
You are entitled to that. Now you had a question.
I did, but it's kind of like
That's okay.
out of
I'm
the
sorry.
flow. Okay. Well, you talk about the parent's job is to set the boundaries. The children's job
Is to test.
is to test it. Okay. I'm a firm believer in schedules and things like that because I used to do older children. Okay. And one of the hardest things that I have had to deal with was people who don't understand about foster children criticizing my husband and myself for the way that we regulate our foster children. And how do you combat that? Because people go, oh well, you're just overly strict. You're not letting that child be a child, because when a child first comes in, you have to regiment it, because they have to. I feel that in order for them to succeed, they have to know the rules.
Right.
They have to know that these are the rules, this is the way my house is run, and these are the consequences if you break the rules.
Right. They do.
And so it doesn't matter if we're in the house or we're at somebody else's house, if we're out in public, this is the way it's done.
Right.
So I've had so much criticism that is one of the reasons why we no longer do older kids.
Criticism from whom?
People that we know, people within our family group, people that we interact with. They just, why are you so strict? Why you've got to lighten up on these kids. Let them be kids.
Education. Education. And there's some great articles on the internet explaining about the needs of foster kids. We say that we want to treat foster kids like normal kids.
You can't.
Because of their experience and their background, that they come to you traumatized and damaged. And so what they need is going to be different than what your own biological kids will have. If they've grown up with you, they know your rules, they know your structure. For these kids that go from one house to another, they don't know from one moment to the next what the rules are going to be. And so you have to tell them that. And so people who don't work in the field don't understand that. And so education is the greatest way to let them know that. So I would say to you, get on the internet, find a great article. And there's one site on here that I put on here for you guys that is excellent. It's a site for foster parents that have all different kind of articles. And it says, this is a great resource for foster parents on a variety of subjects. It's fosterparents.com, articles for foster parents. And find an article or information that when people make comments like that to you, you give them that information so that they can be educated about what the needs of these kids are and how you structure your environment based on their needs, not based on what the general population
The
does.
society says that we're supposed to allow our kids the freedom to express themselves.
See, I don't even believe that.
People who structure their children's lives are, they're over parenting their kids, but if you don't, I've seen my first experiences as a beginning foster parent. I had an RAD child and his sibling, and he was 18 months old when he came to me, and those boys would literally leave me in tears at night because I couldn't understand why. People didn't understand that these kids aren't like normal kids.
Right. And RAD is reactive attachment disorder.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kids that are
They
not
don't-
able to bond.
they don't bond.
They cannot tolerate emotional closeness or physical closeness.
And they don't, it's like we love them, we care about them. We made the mistake when they first came into our house saying, oh, we just need to love them and that'll turn their lives around.
Right.
And they fought it every step of the way, and they manipulated us, they used us until my husband and I looked at, and we're brand new foster parents, okay? And we said, stop, we can't go on like this. So we had to really set the rules down hard on these kids. And so when we were in social settings, people don't understand about reactive attachment disorder. They don't understand.
People don't understand in general about kids with mental health disorders.
Sure.
And so you got to be confident in what you're doing as a parent and as a foster parent. And the best way to do that is through educating yourself so that you understand why you're doing what you're doing. And everybody's not going to understand that. And I tell you, that is a real big pitfall for foster parents that think all I have to do is love these kids and then everything is going to be okay. Okay, the kids come in with their issues, and one of the things that you do as a foster parent is provide that kind of environment that they need in order to be as successful as possible. And that will be different than what you see in the general population. You had a question, and then I'll go over
I was
here.
just going to have a comment. Again, that's what I do. I educate people all the time because they don't know. And a lot of times they don't even know what a foster kid is. I mean, just that basic of how much abuse they've had to, go under before they're actually removed.
Brought into care.
I mean, it's not just like, that mom spanked the kid and now they're in foster care one time. I mean, that's what they sometimes they think. It's just like a one-time thing. It's like, no, they've endured this, and they will never can't go back, and the people are like, they've gone through all that. They're only 4, and it's like, they don't even know. They don't have a clue.
Right. They don't have a clue. Kim?
I just want to comment too. One thing to be sure, we got to keep a lot of the stuff with the kids confidential, including with family people, because I know I made my first mistake out of the gate, and I shared with a relative, oh yeah, they had sexual aggressive behaviors. And right away, they took away my nieces. They couldn't spend a night at the house anymore. I'm like, oh no, big mistake. So what I did is, the next kids that were coming in the home, I just left that alone, and I didn't let my foster kids go over to their home until about 6 months and let the nieces come over and get to know them, and they get to see each other's personalities. You don't necessarily have to go and share all of the foster kids' behavioral problems with them, because right away they'll judge, and they don't need to know all that background, because a lot of that is confidentiality stuff that we're supposed to keep to ourselves anyway. So when you put all that out there, you already make them have a judgment upon them, and they're going to just judge them without even knowing that the kid is being worked on that behavioral problem.
And that's why I say find some information from off the internet that's just general information about the needs of foster children. and about kids who have been abused and what they need, and give them that information so that you're not disclosing specific information about your children, but you're just educating them about the needs of these kids. It's like when we get new foster parents and they say, well, I want a normal child. It's like, okay, you're dealing, right, you're dealing with children who have been abused, and so that's why they're in care. So that already puts them on that side of the bell curve where they're coming to you because something has happened to them and they have not had an adult in their life that's been able to take care of them. So education is a real good thing. And it's tiring. And that's why support groups are really important. And creating a support around you of people who understand what you do and why you do, so that you're not always having to explain to them what you're doing.
It's like my neighbor. She hears screaming. She said, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, exactly.
You know, she doesn't call the child abuse hotline if she hears screaming coming from my house. You know, she knows that I do that. You know, we've done foster care and, you know, temper tantrums and stuff like that, and she's seen it all.
Okay.